And the idea here is to complete until chapter 13, right? Just hold on, let me just confirm the chapter. So what will be next? What will be left next? So now we will have constructed the basics for pricing. What will happen afterwards is we will go into frequency. Once we are done with this class, we'll go into frequency and severity models. We'll go into exposure curves. Then we'll go into the biggest chapter of all, which is GLMs and how do you treat multivariate models. And then we'll go into credibility models. And then we'll go into reinsurance pricing and then investigations and then cat models. So that's going to be the flow, right? So a majority of the basics would have been laid off, would have been created by the end of this chapter, and you should be in a position where we will sail through going forward. So one thing is that I'll try to keep this class for maybe an hour today. I will not take a lot of time. I'll close up all the current existing topics that are there. This will be from a theoretical standpoint, and then we'll dive over the weekend. We'll dive deep into frequency severity model and burning cost models, where the question, it'll be more question based, right? I'll pick up questions from the previous years, we'll solve it, and then I will correct this on the spot so that you are aware of how the correction will work as well. Right? You'll get a sense of how it will look for. It won't be like a full-fledged correction, but it will be somewhat of a immediate feedback mechanism that I will provide. Just hold on. Let me share my screen. Yeah. No. 1 minute. There is a PowerPoint slideshow. Yes. Perfect. You can see my PowerPoint, right?
Yes.
Okay. So where we ended last time was we ended where we calculated the inflation rates, right? We based on whether or not the year of occurrence was, or whether or not we were looking at claims occurrence, or whether or not we're looking at underwriting year basis, we kind of looked at how we are going to calculate the inflation rates, right? Now, what we're going to discuss a little bit today is we're going to discuss on loadings, right? What are the different types of loadings that can exist? Have you guys worked on pricing before on any product?
I have.
You have.
No.
So can you tell me what are the loadings that are there for pricing generally?
So it could be different for different products.
Correct.
For example, if I take health as an example, then the main loading could be loading for any pre-existing diseases,
Okay.
or loading for, let's say, premium payment mode loadings, monthly or yearly. Other than that,
okay. So there are quite a few loadings that you should be aware of, right? And I'm going to just give a list of all the loadings that are there. However, we're going to focus on 4 different types of loadings, right? Which is what the text also focuses on. Now, there is something called an expense loading, right? Where you load expenses that you are going to incur as part of the policy. So that's one aspect. The second type of load is called an investment load, right? Where there is a negative load that you add, which is effectively saying that you can share the investment income between you and the customer, right? So it acts as reducing the premium. So that's the second type of load. The third type of load is just RA premiums, right? If you have a pure risk cost, you can load RA premiums and you can create the you can basically add the RA premiums to the burning cost to arrive at your office premiums. The fourth type of load is just a basic profit load, right? You have to get your profits. It's insurance at the end of the day is a profit driven enterprise. So profit is the main aspect of any insurer. which means that when you're creating a pricing model, you have to load for profit as well. And there are other types of loadings. For example, there's something called a contingency load, right? Where you have a risk premium and then you add a contingency margin on top of the risk premium, right? So that's a contingency loading. However, more often than not, that contingency load gets added along with the risk premium in some cases. So the risk premium has a contingency margin baked in, right? So it depends on definitions really. So we are going to primarily be looking at 4 different types of loading today, which is the RI premium, the expenses, the profits, and the investment, right? RI premium is very simple. There are two methods of incorporating RI premium based loading, right? And both these methods effectively arrive at the same result. So I'm going to show you how as well, right? So the first one is basically RI loading by adding the net cost of RI based on the gross risk premium, right? The second one is gross cost of RI based on the net risk premium. So what is gross risk premium and what is net risk premium? Can you guys try to project, or can you guys try to extrapolate from what we have discussed? What do you mean by gross risk premium and what do you mean by net risk premium? Just based on these two examples, just based on these two definitions.
So gross premium would be after considering all these 4 loadings, basically.
Okay.
And net would be pure risk premium.
You are right, but you have to read the question correctly. What is the gross risk premium and what is net risk premium? You're right. Gross premium, you're absolutely right. But what is the gross risk premium? Just based on this thing that I mentioned, right? Net cost of RI based on gross risk premium, gross cost of RI based on net risk premium. So what is the difference over there? What do you think is the difference? Chalo, let me put it that way.
So gross risk premium does include the reinsurance component as well. So when you subtract reinsurance component, it becomes net risk premium.
Correct. It's not reinsurance component. It is reinsurance recoveries. There's a difference over there, right? Reinsurance component could be reinsurance premium or could be reinsurance recoveries. Here, when you're talking about risk premium, right? You have to know that risk premium basically means burning cost, right? It is the cost, it is the money that you expect to pay to the end customer in terms of claims. So when you talk about gross risk premium, it is premium without recoveries. When you talk about net risk premium, it is premium with recoveries, right? So one way of incorporation is effectively identify what the net cost of RI is. And the net cost of RI is nothing but premium minus recovery. That is the net cost of RI, right? So add that to the gross risk premium, you'll get the total premium. That is one way of adding. Second way of adding is take the gross cost of RI, take the burning cost, which is effectively burning cost net risk premium, which is effectively gross risk premium minus reinsurance recoveries, and then add it to the gross cost of RI, which comes to the same premium. So if you look at the two methods that I've explained below, let's assume that the burning cost is $50. Cost of RI is going to be $12, right? Let's assume that the net cost of RI is $2. So in this scenario, what we are doing is the gross risk premium is 50, right? Net cost of RI is $2. So total premium is 52, right? Now, if you go with the second method, the gross cost of RI is $12. Net risk premium, you subtract the $10, which is the reinsurance recovery that you expect, which is, you take it away from the gross risk premium, you get to $40. You add $12, which is the gross cost of RI, you get to $52. So you might ask me, why are we doing these two methods if they both give the same answer, right? And the reason is because of nuance. The reason is because of context, right? One method is commonly used, method 1, right? Which is the net cost of RI based on gross risk premium. That is commonly used when the ceded premiums are low. And the net cost component comes because of RI expenses also being present, right? So effectively, it makes it easier to do that calculation that way. In the second method, which is the gross cost of RI based on net risk premium, It is used when there is a very high level of excess or a cat RI that's being placed and things like that, right? So think of it as a very XOL driven pricing mechanism. And it is often used when the claim frequency is low, but the amounts are very high, right? It's just a method of accounting, right? Instead of saying 1 plus 2 equal to 3, we are saying, yes, 1 plus 2 equal to 3, and then 2 plus 1 equal to 3, right? That the answer 3 does not change in however you're calculating. It's just that the situation when you use 1 plus 2 and the situation where you use 2 plus 1 changes. One more important thing to know is that the RI cost can be negative as well, right? And can you guys imagine when an RI cost can be negative? When can RI loading be negative? It never happens, by the way. Practically, it never happens because that's basically RI, the reinsurer giving money to the insurer. But can you imagine a situation where RI loadings can be negative?
When there is very business written by the, I mean, very good business written for the reinsurer, and it pays a lot of commission.
Okay.
Back to the
But
insurer.
commissions can never be 100%, no? So you're right. You're absolutely right there. But theoretically, commissions can never be 100%, right? Effectively happens when there is excess competition. When the rates are so soft, when the underwriting cycle is so soft that the reinsurers decide to pick up the premium on like a loss. That's one scenario where you can expect RI loadings to be negative in value. Never happens. Very rarely does it happen. But yeah, that's a theoretical scenario for you guys, right? So this is RI premium. More often than not, this is not tested per se. Like the specific cases of how you load RI premiums don't get tested as much as what you'd expect, right? It's not something that gets like, it's not like a very important point, but it's something that you should know, right? If you know this and suddenly if somebody asks you a 1 marker, you'll be able to answer this now, right? So just remember these points and don't spend more than like 5 minutes when you're revising on this topic, right? It's just there. More important than RI premium is expenses. And this is something that is tested fairly heavily in the exam, right? Because expenses is something that is very important to the general insurance company and the running of any general insurance company, right? Now you might ask me, what are expenses, right? This is the textbook answer for expenses. Although you can, if you work in any general insurance company, you will have a good handle or you'll have a good sense of what the expenses for an insurer fall under, right? Expenses are split into, there's actually, in fact, there's even a mnemonic for this. It's called cosmic, right? I'll leave it to you to find out what is what. The mnemonic is called cosmic for you guys. If you remember, if you want to remember what the expenses are, right? So the first one is staff salaries. So these are the list of expenses, right? Commissions that are payable to the brokers and intermediaries. Office rent is an expense, for example. Office equipment, these are all fixed expenses. Consumables that the insurer will have, those are all expenses, right? Now, you can split all expenses into two different areas, right? One is direct and indirect expenses, and the other is fixed and variable expenses. Can you guys tell me what is the definition of direct and indirect expense? What is a direct expense? And
direct expense would be the expense made directly towards the sale of the policy or towards the procurement of
correct,
business. So, for
correct,
example, an employee traveling to the customer, so that is the direct expense.
perfect. Indirect expense?
And indirect would be anything, any accessories or anything like office equipment or office
Perfect.
rent, which indirectly goes towards the
Perfect.
business. Basically.
Perfect. And what is the difference between fixed and variable expense?
So fixed expense would be anything that's fixed in nature, like staff salaries, office rents, that irrespective of the business, the amount will not change.
Correct.
Irrespective of the revenue, the amount will not change. And the variable expense would be any expense whose amount is dependent upon the amount of business
Perfect.
done. Like commissions or
Perfect, perfect. So see, more often than not in the exam, there might also be a question on list the expenses that are there, right? There'll be a list question, or there'll be an explain question. There'll be a question on like what are the direct expenses for a general insurer, things like that, right? So most of it is focused on these kind of questions. There are questions that are focused more on analysis of expenses, right? Which is what we are going to cover in chapter 19, which is the investigations chapter for GI, for pricing, right? That will have a component on analysis of expenses that we'll cover separately, right? For the time being, understand that loading can be two types. How you can load. So once you have an idea of what the expenses are, you can load for expenses using two mechanisms. One is just create an overall percentage. So let's say 10%, right? And this is most commonly used in Indian GI firms, where you have a fair idea about what the expenses are, right? So you can say that my management expense is 10%, my underwriting expense is 5%. So overall, my total expense is 15%. So if you have a burning cost of 100 rupees, you will load 15%. So it becomes 115 rupees. And then you add more expenses and everything. You add tax, you add all these things, and then you arrive at the office premium, right? Simple. That is the easiest way of going about it. The harder way of going about it is to actually identify specific components of fixed and variable expenses, which we will go into more detail as we go into chapter 19. But the idea here is very simple. Analyze fixed expense, analyze variable expense. For fixed expense, come up with an algorithm that will help in allocating a fixed expense to a particular line of business, right? So that there should be a logic. So let's say that I run two lines of business, right? I run only two lines, which is property and motor, right? And I don't do anything else. My total fixed expense for the year is 1 crore. Now, when I do an expense analysis, how do I allocate the 1 crore to property and motor? I have to split the 1 crore between property and motor when I'm doing any analysis or any pricing this thing, right? Now I have 1 crore fixed expense. How do I split it between property and motor is what we will study in chapter 19, right? So for example, not to introduce the concept early, but let's take a simple logic, right? It could be basis GWP. So for example, let's say that 80% of the business is motor business, 20% of the business is property business. So one logic that I can use is I can take 80% of the fixed expense as motor expense and 20% of the fixed expense as property expense. So 1 crore rent gets split 80-20 depending on how GWP is. The second method could be possibly how much utilization within a team that's happening, right? So for example, the property team could be large and they could occupy a large space in the office. They could be occupying 70% of the space. While the motor team, we could predominantly be like an online player, like say an Acco or a Digit, and the motor team could just be a bunch of techies who are sitting in the corner of the office. So you can then make the argument and say that, so I am splitting this by office space percentage, right? You can say that 70% of my rent is going towards property business, 30% of my rent is going towards motor business. So the point I'm trying to make here is that the assumptions that you make and the algorithm and the rationale that you come up with will heavily impact how the expenses are split. Variable expense, you don't need to do much because it's already, it scales along with the business. So there's already a simple equation between a variable expense and the business that's being sold. Whereas with fixed expense, that analysis is a lot harder. And there's a separate branch in general insurance where you only do expense analysis because it's like a bottom line item, and it becomes very important for people to kind of understand better how expenses are being allocated. So that's a separate field unto itself, right? Where people are constantly coming up with approaches to kind of give better rationale for explanations, right? Let's go to a question. And this is a very interesting question, right? I'm going to give you guys 7 minutes, right? I want you guys to understand the question first and then come up with an answer, right? The question is very simple. There's a country and it has a established personal lines insurance market. And the media has highlighted how premiums quoted for new business can be significantly different to the premiums charged to existing customers on renewal. So you have to understand the keywords over here. Premium quoted for new business is different, significantly different to premiums charged to existing customers on renewal for equivalent cover. So that's another point. Your JTBD right now is to suggest reasons for the difference between new business and renewal pricing, right? I'm giving you guys 7 minutes. So the time now is 22. Chalo, I'll give you 8 minutes, right? At 7:30, I want you to guys to come up with a bunch of points. Remember, it's a 5-mark question. And there is a small trick in this question here. Let's see if you guys get it, right? 8 minutes, go. Always, before you start, visualize the question in your head first. Think through different large topics that you can, you can answer in, and then mind map it. Mind map it exactly like how we have been mind mapping it pretty much everywhere, right? So, these mind maps are generally a good way for you guys to think through. Five more minutes, guys. Please indicate in the chat if you're done, because if all 3 of you guys are done before, I can start the discussion. Are you guys done? Shall we discuss? I know I said 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes, Sunil.
Okay. Now let's hear it. What your answers are before we look at the answers that are there. Go for it.
New business is difficult to acquire, so therefore it is made cheaper in order to attract the policyholders.
Okay.
The commissions on non, so like I've divided it in two parts. One, the new business is because there is a difference. So there could be cases where the new business is getting high, the premiums are higher, and in the cases where it is lower.
Okay, good. All right.
So, so okay. So in the cases where, for example, the commission is more uh, on the new business, so the new business premiums are higher, and on the renewal pricing, the commissions are low,
Yeah.
and hence a difference in pricing.
Yeah.
So then there will be a change in the economy. Now,
Okay.
uh, the other is uh, I've written the inflation. Now,
Okay.
will that
No, just tell me
um,
your answers. We'll discuss it. Don't worry. Just speak your answers. It's fine. There are no wrong answers. Remember that. Inflation. Okay. What was the next point?
and for the expenses also, the acquiring expense is higher,
Okay.
and those. So for the new business, it is higher, but then that if we are making it cheaper, then that extra cost we are distributing to the existing customers,
Hmm.
and in those cases, the renewal price gets higher.
Okay. All right.
And now the policyholder behavior has also changed. So,
Okay.
but we now their tendency to claim has changed. So there would be more claims. So the new business
Okay.
pricing has
New business price.
increased.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. All
And
right.
there has been a change in the underwriting cycle. So it has moved, let's say, from the soft market towards the hard market. So, but we can't increase the price of the existing customers who are in the renewal pricing. So
Okay.
for the new customers, we're charging higher.
Okay. All right.
And because of the change in technology,
Okay.
now there, so because it's a personal line, so it could be, motor or etc. So
Understood.
that is
You said some change in technology is causing the change in pricing for. Okay. Good. All right. Anything else?
investment returns.
Investment returns. All right. Okay.
And one would be the business mix, the change in business mix.
Change in business mix. All right. Okay. So this is your points. All right. What about Ankit and Ankur? Tell me your points. Let us discuss everything.
More or less similar to what Vidhi has told actually.
Okay.
We can also include marketing and sales cost, which
Marketing
is
and
high for
cost.
the new customer.
All right.
The conversion time is high, so we need to take into account the future inflations.
Okay.
Like in one of the classes, you discussed the difference in the time period which happens because of the claim which is reported, and we need to take into account that inflation.
Okay. Okay.
And reinsurance premium would vary for the new customer versus the old customer. Then regulations might have changed over the period,
All right.
which could impact the new customer. What else? Yes, I mean, yeah.
That's about it.
So maybe we can divide into expenses.
Okay.
Then we can divide into external factors, which will include underwriting cycle, technology,
Right.
and investment returns, business mix. Then we can also divide into customer behavior,
Good.
which could include that in the new a new business will have a higher chances of lapse, or they will so that needs to be account which can impact the policy.
Right.
And then we can also categorize the regulation factor,
Right.
where and also data factor can also come into picture, where we may have limited set of data for the new customer while we know the customer behavior for the existing customer. So
Good.
yeah.
All right. All right. Good. All right. What about you, Ankur?
So I could come up with 5, 6 points. So first was that there would be a difference in expenses incurred to procure the new business compared with the retention of the existing customers. Next would be the commission rates could be different for the new business as compared to the renewals.
Okay.
Next would be that the company can provide some additional loyalty discounts to the existing customers.
All right.
Next would be there could be some experience-based discounts or loadings to the existing customers that could have a differential premium as compared to the new. Since the retaining existing customer may be easier as compared to procuring the new business, the company can have a slightly different profit margin.
Yeah.
For both these customers, and also there could be some selection related differences in premiums for between new and existing customers.
Okay. All right. 6 points. All right. So see, wide feedback, right? You guys, the way you guys are thinking is absolutely spot on, right? For example, Vidhi's thinking on scenarios where new business is higher and new business is lower, right? That's a very important distinction that you guys have to make, because they've said significantly different in the question. They have not said whether it is higher or lower. So you get brownie points for giving those scenarios, right? That's one point. Second point, with respect to how Ankit was talking about expenses, external factors, cycling through all those, this thing, that's a very good approach, right? Where you can come up with a wide range of solutions. Ankur, you had very good points with respect to things like loyalty discounts and all, which is directly like a good point that will probably fetch you like 0.5, maybe even 1 mark if you give like a detailed argument, right? However, what you guys have not gotten is structure, right? You need to have a structure in your answer for you guys to get full marks, right? For example, this is how you have to think through, right? The points that you guys made are all absolutely right. It is just that they are not structured in a way that will make the marker understand your thought process, right? Remember one point, when you are writing the exam, you have to think from the viewpoint of the marker, right? The marker has to understand what you guys are thinking, right? It cannot just be in a vacuum, right? You can't just throw your points in a vacuum and hope that the person who's reading it will always understand. So if they don't understand your answer, however right your answer is, it is going to end up getting bad marks, right? So focus on getting a structure right, right? So the first point which was made was acquisition cost is higher, right? Absolutely good point. Now you have to state what is the acquisition cost, right? Acquisition cost is high. Acquisition cost is different. For new business, it could be higher or lower, right? Then you have to just make a point as to if not why it is higher, but just a small point which says that it is high, right? So that's one point. Second point, regulatory restrictions, very good point that was mentioned. type of renewal might be a statistically significant factor, right? You have to mention that you're giving the pricing exam, right? And if someone asks you, why is new business pricing different from renewal pricing? The first thing that has to come to your mind is that the rating factors are different for new business, and like business type is a significant factor, which is why you're seeing different premiums, right? So that should be an obvious answer that you come with. Loyalty discounts, like Ankur said, good answer, right? Attract new customers. I think someone had put attracting new customers. Good answer. Inflation, the problem here with inflation and policyholder behavior, change in underwriting cycle, the problem there is that while they are valid answers, the issue here is that they affect new business and renewals in the same manner, right? Think about this, right? If the economy goes into recession, both new business and renewal business customers will be equally affected. It's not like the economy is going to target only new business customers, right? New business volumes might go down. So if your answer is poor economy leading to drop in business, which then leads to change in pricing, then it's the right answer. But just poor economy in itself might not be a right answer. The problem with your solution there is that it's an incredibly detailed solution. So you will spend a lot of time writing that solution out. And it takes a lot of time to type it out, right? So you will end up getting only 0.5 marks, maybe 1 mark if they also agree with your answer. But you could have scored a lot of marks by just giving the obvious answers. You're right. You're right. They will probably give you marks, but you burnt minutes thinking and writing that answer, right? So it becomes counterintuitive. So my recommendation is, when you are structure with an 80-20 rule, right? 80% of the answers should be very straightforward, simple answers that connect to the question. That 20% of the remaining answers can be complicated points that you guys come up with, right? So there should be like a flow of the answer that you write. When you write the answer, there should be a flow. There should be a logical flow, and that maximizes the amount of marks you get from the exam, right? If you don't maximize it, what happens if you write whatever you're thinking, right? Then what happens is that there's a chance that people will not understand your point. And when they don't understand your point, they will err on the side of caution and they will cut marks. And this has happened to me personally, right? This happens to me personally. And I know it's very easy to say it. It's very difficult to do it in real life, because I know how difficult it is, right? Because you are under exam pressure. So that's one advice that I will give to you, right? One more important point over here, which you guys missed completely, was pricing systems, right? So you have to talk about how pricing systems could be different and could lead to different rates for new business and renewal, right? For example, there could be a new GLM model that is there. There could be different rating factors for new and different renewal business, right? Like someone touched on it, but they didn't go into detail, which was customer lifetime value and likelihood of customers paying might be different for new business and renewals, right? For example, new business customers generally tend to shop around a lot more than renewing customers. Renewing customers, there's some inertia to kind of not shop around and renew, right? But with some new business customers, there's always a tendency to shop around. So that is one reason why rates could be different, right? Because if I have a tendency to shop around, I have to simply cater to my needs. Insurer has to cater to my needs, right? There could be different underwriting. Underwriting guidelines could be different for new business and renewal customers, right? It could just be the growth strategy of the company. So growth strategy, remember, these kind of points are fairly generic points that you can remember. The problem, and the thing is, if you can tailor these points towards the particular scenario that is there in the question, you'll end up getting, like the mark that you have to get, right? So growth strategy of the company is a very good point, right? The company could focus on renewals, or the company could focus on acquisition and not renewals. Let's say that there's a new company out there. They only have 10,000 customers, right? They need to get from $1.5 million to $3 million or $4 million. That's their growth target that they have, right? Now the company could just say, I don't give a damn about my renewal rates because my renewal rates are already 60-50%. So I don't care, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to focus only on acquisition of new business. My entire thing, my entire marketing budget is going to go through acquisition, and they will go headfirst into acquisition channels and not engagement and retention channels, right? So this could be a reason as to why new business and renewal pricing is different. So are you seeing the thought process over here? That's how you think, right? And the challenge is you have to think through like this within 10 minutes because the question was 5 marks, right? So you have to have all these points quoted and ready to go within 10 minutes. That should be the target. But good points, very good points. Investment returns, for example, good point. The only problem is you can't, you have to tie investment returns to new business and renewal, which is very difficult to tie, right? There is a case to be made. You can make the case, but the problem is it's a very convoluted case. And when it's a convoluted case, you have to spend a lot of time convincing the other guy that, yeah, it's the right answer, which is very difficult to make, right? So it becomes more and more difficult. So the more loops that you add, the more difficult it becomes. Again, inflation, right? Inflation might affect the cost of new vehicles or the cost of only new vehicles, right? And that's not necessarily new business. New business is not defined as new vehicles in motor insurance, right? New business could be also rollover business that you're getting from other insurers. So you see, right? Inflation, economy, all those, it impacts everybody equally. So when it impacts everybody equally, it becomes very difficult for you to kind of take that account. All right, clear? Okay, next, investment income. So there was actually, I think this was in the paper I passed. There was like a 4-marker on how does investment income or describe investment income, the role of investment income in pricing or something like that, right? It's just one page in the text. It's just one page in the text. There's not a lot of details there, right? And the reason for that is because this is very rare in GI. You guys have been in GI for, I don't know how many years. I've been in GI for 10 years. I've never seen, there was one time where we considered investment income, and that was during the time we were pricing for long-term two-wheeler vehicles, where we are arriving at a price for long-term two-wheeler vehicles. When it first released into the market, we were doing the pricing exercise and we were doing the profit testing exercise. And that was the only time that I can recall where we analyzed the rate of return we would get from our investments. And we kind of arrived at a price depending on the rate of investment. And we kind of gave it like there was a rev share between the customer. There's effectively a rev share between the customer and the insurer, right? But most often than not, it does not happen. It's very rare in GI. And why do you think it's rare in GI? It's a very interesting market related question. Why do you think it's very rare in GI, at least in the Indian context? Why is investment income never shared with the customers?
Returns are volatile. One
No.
of the reasons.
Yes, but no.
Yeah.
The policies are very short term.
Yeah.
The companies don't have enough time to earn much of a return out of the premiums. So
Fair enough. But I could, even if I earn 1%, I can share 0.5% with the customer, no? Why is that not happening in the market? At least in the Indian market. The other markets, not sure, but at least in the Indian context. Why? How many insurers in India, how many general insurers in India post underwriting profits? Do you guys know that?
only one.
One or almost none, I
Yeah.
think so.
So
And they rely on investment income most.
that is your answer.
Okay.
In India, profitability of general insurance companies are driven by investment income. Insurers
Yes.
make profits in investment income in India and not underwriting income. So that's the reason why investment income is never shared. And this is the reason why when we came up with this profit testing model, it got shut down immediately. right? It was like a brutal shooting down by the CEO. He said, "Are you smoking? What are you smoking? Why did you do this?" Right. So, okay. So that aside, effectively an investment income acts as a negative load, right? So it acts on reducing the premiums, and the insurer basically shares the profit with the customer. The return is effectively determined by the duration of funds and the form of liabilities that the insurer has, right? Whether they're long-term, long-tailed or short-tailed in nature. Uh, Ankur, I think, said it right? Short-tail lines have lesser returns. Long-tail lines generally have greater returns, and hence the investment impact is more significant for long-tail lines, right? Main considerations that you have to account for is what are the investment conditions. I think Ankit was talking about volatility in investments, right? That's a very valid point, right? Investment conditions needs to be accounted for. What are the assets that are likely to be held at to be accounted for? What are the consistency in the inflation assumptions? Those are things that you have to account for, right? So if there's a 4-marker on describe how investment income is accounted for in insurance pricing, you just have to mention this. You have to reference this slide, and you have to basically explain to them how it is a negative load, what are the returns determined by, and what are the considerations. I think you'll get full marks there. Clear? All right. Now I'll ask you guys a question. And this is effectively something which should be second nature to you when you're solving any pricing related paper, right? The final outcome for you in pricing is to come up with a rating formula, right? When you are doing a pricing exercise in your organization as well, the end product of the pricing exercise is not the prices themselves, but the rating formula that is being used to obtain the price. Now, the rating formula could be a simple pen and paper formula, or it could be a complex output from a GLM model. But at the end of the day, it's just a formula, right? It could have relativities and whatever. But at the end of the day, everything that you will see forward is driven by a formulaic approach, right? Now, to start off that entire process, we have a question over here, and I'm going to give you guys only 4 minutes to solve this question, right? CF is the expected claim frequency. CA is the average claim amount. JP is the gross premium. Commission C is a proportion of gross premium. FE is the fixed expenses per policy. VE is the variable expenses per policy. CHE is the claims handling expenses per claim. Profit as a proportion of gross premium is P. Now, I want you to give the rating formula for GP. So how do you get GP from all these components?
Can I try?
Wait for 1 minute. Are you guys done?
Sure.
If everybody is done, you can go, Ankur. Or you can maybe message only me. I'll tell you whether you're right or wrong. Just send a chat only to me. Are you sending me a chat?
Yes. Fine.
Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
I think you have missed a bracket somewhere, but most of the components seem to be in the right place. But there is like a small component which is off.
Oh, so yeah. Wait.
Done, guys? You can put the equation in a separate chat for me, so I can.
Maybe you could show the answer to me. I'm not like
Oh,
fully convinced with my answer. So.
okay, fair enough. Ankit,
You can show the answer. I'll just check.
done. All right, cool. Okay, so the answer is fairly straightforward, right? The first thing that you have to do is you have to obtain the equation for GP, right? Which is nothing but the frequency times the claim amount plus commission into gross premium, because we said that gross premium is a proportion of GP. Sorry, commission is a proportion of GP plus fixed expenses plus variable expenses into GP, right? Because variable expenses is a proportion of your gross premium plus claim.
Here I get confused because it was written variable expense is multiple of number of policies. So I assumed a number of policy are written variable expense into number of
Okay.
policies.
No, if you have number of policies, so if you're arriving at the equation using number of policies, then you're right. But you don't have number of policies. So you use another proxy, right? Which is which is total gross premium. So you're looking at gross premium where you have to look at this thing that we mentioned as well, right? Which is VE is variable expenses per policy. So I've told you per policy, this is the variable expense. So if I assume average premiums, then my GP is also going to scale. My variable expense numbers will scale as per my overall averages. So my variable expense times gross premium per policy times the total premium will give me the total variable expense that I have. Clear?
Okay.
And then I have claims frequency times the claims handling expense, because my claims handling expense is per claim, which means that my claims handling expense should be multiplied with the claims frequency because it is per claim, right? Plus profit as a proportion of gross premium times gross premium, right? You equate all that, you do LHS, RHS, and then you arrive at the final number, right? Which is CF into claim amount plus claims handling expenses and plus fixed expenses divided by 1 minus C minus VE minus P. Now, this is an equation that's specific to this case. If that changes, you have to change the formula accordingly, right? No pricing equation is the same. This is not like a universal equation that is there. This is just an equation for the question that was given. So tomorrow, my profit could, be a proportion of my claims frequency as well. In that case, you have to change P into GP to P into CF, for example, right? So really depends on how insurers see this point. Clear? But one recommendation from me is look at a couple of questions from chapter 13 on how pricing formulae are created, and make sure that you're comfortable with the pricing formula, right? It will not take you 20 minutes to look at those questions, right? Go to chapter 13, just look at a couple of questions over there. And by the second or third question, you will have a good handle on how to solve it, right? Beyond that, you don't need to look at it. Don't spend more time on this, right? Because in the future, all your pricing equations are going to be based on this. So your any which is going to build your muscle over there. However, my recommendation is either today or tomorrow, make sure that you go back, go to chapter 30, go to a couple of questions that are there, and just go through. It will take you 20 minutes, not more than that, right? And don't spend more than that. You by the 20th minute, you would have mastered this, right? And it's a good thing to master. Clear? All right.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you another question now, right? And I want you to give me the answer in 2 minutes. I know it's 4 minutes. I know you have to generate at least 8 points, but I'm going to give you only 2 minutes for this. So this is going to be lightning round for you guys, right? We're going to talk about a little bit about rating factors before we jump into frequency, severity, and everything. You guys know what rating factors are, right? We have discussed this before. You know what rating factors are. What are the requirements of a good rating factor? Like, what do you need for a rating factor to be qualified as good? So I'll give you guys 2 minutes, or better yet, let's not go 2 minutes. Let's go person to person, right? Let's go like a round robin. There are 8 points, right? Let's go round robin. So let's start. Let's start with Ankur. Ankur, what do you think? Name one requirement for a rating factor to be deemed as a good rating factor.
Should be easy to obtain while procuring while selling the policy.
Okay, easy to obtain in the sense, I didn't understand that.
So in the sense that it should be we should be able to get that details from the customer to consider it as a good rating factor.
Okay, understood.
Otherwise, that may not be used.
Understood. Okay, good point, valid point. Next, Vidhi.
It should not be a proxy to another factor. Like it should not be too correlated with other
Good
rating
point.
factors.
Very good point. No correlation with other factors. Good point. Next, Ankit.
Quantifiable in nature.
Good point. Very good point. Quantifiable in nature. Next, Ankur.
Enough data should be available to have a good rating for that factor.
Enough data. I will give it to you, but it's not like a textbook answer, by the way. Huh? But it's a good point, but it's not a textbook answer, because we'll explain why it's not a textbook answer. All right, next.
That rating factor should be acceptable to the market.
Good, very good point. Next, Ankit.
I mean, similar line, regulator should approve that rating factor. It should not be something which is not allowed.
Not regulator, go a little broader, market should accept.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Yeah. Right? So not just regulator, market should be accepted. Very good point. Next, Ankur.
Can't think of anything else.
Okay, fair enough. Vidhi, can you think of anything else?
Like it is quantifiable, that is their sentence.
We've discussed that already. Quantifiable.
Yeah, quantifiable.
Yeah, discussed. That was discussed. Anything else?
Should be related to the product which we are pricing. I mean, how to put it. We should not have
that is the
gender for property. We should not have factor which is not related. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but
factor which is not related. I mean, in the sense, you are there but not there.
yeah. The right words are.
The right word is define the risk clearly. It should define the risk clearly. The right word. Okay, good. Find the risk clearly. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 2 more.
Independent, though, she told already.
Yeah. By the way, you guys have gotten 3 marks. For you to get 4 marks, you have to get 2 more. No points? Chalo. Good try. Very good try, guys. All right. So let's discuss the points you guys got, right? Which is very simple. Practical. Yes. Very good point is there. Should not correlate to other variables, no other factors, which there should not be any proxy. It's a good point. Defines the risk clearly. That's a very good point. Acceptable to the policyholder, acceptable to the market. Again, very good points. It should be non-manipulable, right? For example, when your rating factor should not ask how many claims do you think you'll make, right? That's not a rating factor, because that can be manipulated by everybody, right? Everybody, and especially in India, you know how people love to find loopholes, right? If you imagine this, you are the actuary of a company and you come up with the pricing system, and that pricing system, there's a rating factor which is expected claims in the next year given by the user. How many users do you think are going to honestly answer 1, 2, 3 claims? Everybody will answer 0 and get the lowest price. So it has to be, the rating factor that you select has to be non-manipulable, right? And the other points that you guys kind of sort of got and missed at the same time was, it should be objective and it should be verifiable, right? So the rating factor details should not only be non-manipulable, it should be easily verifiable, right? For example, I cannot ask, how long have you been driving? Right? I can't ask you, or sorry, I can ask you how long have you been driving. So I'm really sorry. I can't ask you how good of a driver you are. How can I verify that you're a good driver or a bad driver? Right? When you're coming in, you're a customer who's just coming in for a quote, right? I have no information on you, right? And one of my rating factors cannot be, are you a good driver? Yes or no, right? On the flip side, I can actually ask you, how many years have you been driving? And I can make a statistical analysis on number of years of driving versus frequency of accidents, right? And I can make a claim that, okay, if you are more experienced, there's a lesser chance for you getting into an accident, and I can make the change in pricing accordingly. Clear? Remember, there is another mnemonic for this called Venom ADA, right? Please go through this. These are all things that you remember at the tips of your fingers when you go to the exam, right? It should be the moment somebody asks you this question, because this question has been asked for 3 marks. This question has been asked for 4 marks. And this is something that you can score very, very easily, right? It's like 4 marks for the taking, 3 marks for the taking. The moment you see this question, this should be the first question that you should answer in the exam, right? Because remember that when you write the exam, you always have something called the cold start problem. Do you know what the cold start problem is? It's not only in exam, it's in real life as well. It's in general life. Like, are you aware of something called the cold start problem?
Yes.
What is the cold start problem?
It's like we take a lot of time to begin our work with, but once we begin,
Perfect.
the flow comes in.
Perfect. Right? Have you noticed the cold start problem in your exam taking? Because I have. I have.
Always, always, always.
So these are the questions which you should attack right at the moment you see these kind of questions, right? That's why I keep telling you guys, memorize these points. Because the moment you see this, right, your cold start problem is completely resolved, right? And you can hit the ground running, and you know, your first half an hour in your exam is very crucial to set the tone of the exam, right? So that's why I keep reinforcing or I keep saying this like a broken record, that always keep these mnemonics memorized and always keep these points mugged up in your mind, because these are easy marks, these are scoring marks, and more importantly, this helps with your pole start problem, right? You will probably feel a lot more relieved when you answer that first question correctly, and you know that you've gotten, let's say, 3 marks or 4 marks or whatever, even 2 marks, right? The moment you know that you've gotten that 2 marks, your confidence level changes in the exam, right? So this is how you start scoring more marks, right? So remember that. Clear?
Yeah.
All right. Now, when we talk about rating factors and we talk about complex models, you should always remember that there is a big trade-off that you as actuaries have to consider. And this is the case for every pricing model does that. So can you give me 1 second? Sorry. This is the case for every pricing model that is there, right? And what is it? When you keep increasing the number of rating factors that are there, right? You are adding more homogeneity to the risk cells that are there in the model, right? However, the more rating factors you add, the less data there is in individual risk cells, because you are breaking up the data into multiple risk cells, right? Let's say that you have only one rating factor, which is gender. So you have male and female. Now your risk cells, there are only 2 columns that are there, is male, is female. And that's about it, right? They're 2 categorical variables. So your data is simple, it's easy. Now let's say you add another rating factor, location, and you have 2 locations, location A and B. Now you have 4 risk cells, is male, is female, is location A, is location B. Now you are splitting the data further, right? Because there are now 4 categories that you have to account for. There are 4 different combinations that you have to account for. Now, let's say you add another rating factor, which has another 2 levels. Now it's not just 4 levels, it is 4, 2 into 2 into 2, right? It is 8 levels. So now your number of rows have gone from 2 to 4 to 8. And that's how it goes, right? It is exponentially increasing. So every time you add a new rating variable, you account for more homogeneity in the model, you account for more homogeneity in the individual risk cells. However, the cost that you pay for it is with respect to data credibility, right? So the most important criteria when you're doing any modeling exercise, right? Not just pricing models, not just reserving models, this is general life models, right? If you ever get into data science, this is like a major point of contention in data science, in the world of data science, in the world of machine learning, right? Which is models should be parsimonious. And what does parsimony mean? What does parsimonious model mean? Parsimonious models mean models which have just the right amount of independent variables, right? It should not be too many. It should not be too less, right? That's a very important criteria that you should always follow. And there's always a trade-off between rating factors and overfitting within the model. If you add a lot of rating factors, what will happen is you'll end up with a model where there is overfitting happening, which is not at all something that you want as a modeler, right? You want something where there is no overfitting, there is the right amount, there is a certain amount of curve that's there into the final, final modeling equation. More rating factors also adds more difficulties over and above this trade-off, right? Which is there are IT level difficulties. If you guys have spent any time with any insurance company IT team, you will know that this is perhaps a bigger difficulty for you to handle than the trade-off. The trade-off is something that you can explain to your appointed actuary. But IT level difficulties of implementing, let's say you have a new rating factor, you want to implement it within your IT team, that's another fight that you have to go into, right? So that those difficulties are there, right? The second one is policyholder understanding, right? Now, when you create a new rating factor, policyholders have to understand it and they have to fill in the details. Third point connected to policyholders understanding is broker revolts. Your brokers, your intermediaries, they have to give you and supply you the data, right? Which never happen. So they'll say, we cannot comply, we cannot fill this data in. How many of you guys have had any experience with cyber policy proposals? Do you guys deal with cyber pricing?
I've done pricing, but not encountered any proposals.
Okay. I would urge you to speak to the sales guys who collect the proposals, because I have been both the actuary who has done the pricing and I've been the broker who has filled the proposals. And I will tell you, they're wildly different things, right? There's always a fight. So always remember, when you are making pricing models, always remember that there is a person in the end filling the data, right? And the pricing model has to be accounting for the fact that there is someone filling the data. So you can come up with a model which is perfect, chef's case, and like you can pull your collar up, and finally you can come up. At the end of the day, if there are too many rating factors, if there is too much data that's required in the proposal, it's just not going to fly. So the model that you come up with is not going to generate the business that you think it's going to generate. So this particular gap is where you as an actuary are going to help. You are there as an actuary to bridge this gap, right? And this gap bridging is what the job of a pricing actuary is, right? Nothing more, nothing less. Building the model, all that, yeah, that's all there, right? That's granted, right? Uh, That goes without saying. That's part of the job description of being a pricing actuary, right? You have to build the model, you have to come up with all those. Yeah, that's there. But the soft factors that are there, right? This is even more important than just building the quantitative models. And when you think about pricing the next time, you have to think about these factors, because these factors differentiate good actuaries from great actuaries, right? The ability for actuaries to foresee these problems and then make changes in the pricing model beforehand is what differentiates the good from the great and the great from the best. Clear?
Yes.
All right. And before we part, I'm going to come up with perhaps another very important slide for you guys, right? And I'll tell you why this slide is important. The slide is important because when it comes to pricing, more often than not, there will be a question on burning cost and frequency severity model. Like it's like a given question, right? Now, a follow on to that question is a question on considerations, right? They will say, okay, please calculate the burning cost for this particular program that is running, right? They'll give you all the data. They'll tell you to calculate the frequency. They tell you to calculate the severity. They'll tell you to do all those things, right? It'll be like 8 marks, 10 marks. And it'll be like you'll have to, it's just formula driven. You have to finish the formula and everything. And then as an add-on to that question, for 3 to 5 marks, more often than not, there'll be a question saying, now that you have the risk premium, what are the additional considerations that you have to account for before generating the office premium, right? Now, we know the difference between risk premium and office premium. We know what the components are, which is investment income, loading, catastrophe loading, profit loading. So you can add all those, but you have to also account for other practical considerations that are there, right? And this is one slide that you have to definitely focus on and make sure you nail all these conditions, because you can use these points directly into those questions. So for example, market considerations, right? One answer you can give is business objectives of the company is different from business objectives will lead to difference in the final consideration for premiums. So let's say that your risk premium is 100 rupees and you are very aggressive in the market and you want to pick things up. You might say that my business objective is to get the client, acquire the client at I don't care what cost. And you might give a office premium for only 25 rupees. You might say that I'm going to take a loss on this client, but I need the client for market share, right? And you might quote and you might win. So these are all the considerations that you have to account for in your exam, right? So I am going to go through them. I'm going to run through them as a list. However, I want you guys to make sure that you study this slide in detail because it's a very, very important slide in my opinion. A very high likelihood that you will get a question from this slide. Slide number 44. Please make sure that you go through it. Please make sure that you understand it. Please make sure that you process it, right? Because 80-90% chance that you're going to get a question from this slide, right? How many marks? 3 to 5 marks. That much I can possibly guarantee you, right? So what are the additional considerations? Practical considerations are simple. There are market considerations, considerations on profit optimization, considerations on insurance and underwriting cycles, terms and conditions, and other influences, right? What are market considerations? Market considerations could be different business objectives, competitive pressures that are there, market conditions that are there, acceptability of the premium with the client, renewal of the client, no claim discounts that are there. Again, with profit optimization, you are looking at lowering of profit margins to get higher profit, higher absolute profits. You have to understand that there is always a balanced approach that is required when it comes to profit optimization, although that is not a point that you have to give in the exam, right? Insurance cycle, again, similar to underwriting cycle is the same. It's not a lot of difference. High premium, for example, let's say that you are operating in a soft underwriting cycle and your burning cost is, somewhere in the clouds. You can't give that as an output, right? Nobody is going to accept that price. So that's something that you have to consider when you're writing. When it comes to other influences, you have to look at availability of capital, cost and availability of reinsurance. That's a very important thing. So when you talk about reinsurance, don't only talk about the cost, also talk about the availability, right? Remember this. Cost and availability are two different factors because even if reinsurance is available, it has to be available at a cost that is acceptable to you as the insurer, right? Just because reinsurance is available does not mean that everything is done and dusted, right? The premium has to be payable by you. If they say that the premium is equal to the premium that you collected from the insurer, it doesn't make any sense for you to even take reinsurance from that reinsurer, right? So cost and availability are two different points. If you just write a reinsurance, it will be 0.5 marks. If you write cost and availability of reinsurance, it is 1 mark. So remember that nuance, right? Sophistication of sales systems is another factor. Demand of regulators is another factor. Relationship with reinsurers is another factor. Relationship with brokers. So this relationship with RA, relationship with brokers, these are all beautiful generic points that in contextual cases will definitely fetch you 1 mark, right? Please remember these points. Please remember this slide, the very important slide. And on the weekend class, we are going to solve questions where we are going to directly use this slide. So please make sure that you are aware of what this slide is. Okay. Clear? Not
Yes.
clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Doubts? If there are any doubts, please ask. More than happy to answer questions on this.
I have some questions, but they are general, not related to this. So
Okay.
maybe after
We have only one slide. I'm going to take 1 minute and then you can ask the questions, right? So finally, we have experience rating system, right? Do you guys know what experience rating is? Experience rating is nothing
Based on the historical, based
Ah,
on the historical data or the historical information we are using that.
good answer. There is one detail you have to add. Based on historical detail of that particular risk, that is experience rating.
Okay.
So in India, group health insurance is a perfect example of experience rating systems. Group health insurance, how do you price group health insurance? It's priced at an account level. It's not priced on a portfolio level, right? So if my company has a claims outgo of 30 lakhs, I can expect the premium to be at least 30 lakhs next year. As simple as, right? Or over time, say let's say over 5 years, my average claims cost is 15 lakhs. I can expect the average claims cost next year to be at least 15 lakhs, right? So that is how experience rating works. Experience rating is when you use the individual risk data historical claims data of that individual risk to price the future premium of that individual risk, right? There are two types of experience rating systems. One is prospective and the other one is retrospective. And it's a little woozy of how they work, right? Prospective is when the renewal depends on the experience of that risk prior to the renewal, right? For NCB is a perfect example of a prospective rating system. A retrospective rating system is where the premium is adjusted based on the experience of that period. So this generally happens in marine insurance, right? Where a deposit premium is paid and adjustments are made as the policy goes on, right? This is a retrospective rating system. Both rating systems exist across the world, right? This is not tested as much, but just this is more of an FYI, right? Within prospective and retrospective, there are two types of further systems that can be used. One is number-based and one is claim cost-based, right? Number-based is when the adjustments are made only based on claim numbers. So your NCB example that I gave is a perfect number-based system, right? The other one is cost-based, where the adjustment is made on claim amounts and not on claim numbers. So this is primarily used in employer's liability and motor fleet. Clear? So you just need to know what this is. Very unlikely that you'll get tested on this. Okay. So this ends chapter 13. Chapter 11, 12, 13 is done. Right. Now we are going to go into frequency and severity models and burning cost models. That will be our next target. And after that, we have exposure curves. And then the biggest chapter of all, which is GLM, which is going to be a very fun chapter, because I really love that chapter. I love teaching that chapter. I love going a little ahead and talking about how machine learning models also work. So you guys will get that as well as an additional add-on. And then credibility systems, and then reinsurance premium, which is just a theoretical chapter, and then catastrophe models. And then we are done with SP8. So I think we are at the we are reaching the peak. GLM is going to be the peak, and then quickly we will go over. Cool. All right. So questions. You guys had general questions. More than happy to answer.
It's more related to like you were mentioning, so slide 44, remember it? But then these slides are available like after 2-3 weeks. By that time, I'm
No,
expecting
we've told them. Yeah, we've told them these slides will be available within the week. So they're editing it. So all these videos get edited as well, right? So there are some edits that run in the video.
Yeah.
Once the editing is done, I've been told that these slides will be available within the week. So it's going to get, please give a little bit of this thing, because we're running this for the first time, right? So a little bit of learning is required here and there as well. So should be done within the week. I will upload this and I will give it to them right away, and you should get it within the week.
Okay, because the last class I missed, so I was hoping if the class on
it should happen. So they specifically reached out to me and they said, Vidhi is going to ask this question. Please make sure you answer this. So within the week. Please.
No, even I have asked this.
Okay, even you asked.
Because what I try to do is I just go back to the class and make notes in spreadsheet, so that when I solve some questions, I can refer to the notes directly.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
So, and if we can see the videos or presentation quickly, then we retake more. That's the intention.
Makes a lot of sense. We'll make sure that it's up ASAP.
Okay. If you can if you can push it, then it will be a good help.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will definitely push it. Okay. Clear.
And the other one
I hope
question
the
I had, like,
one point which I wanted to ask,
yes,
I hope the whimsicals are helping.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
It's just that when we practice, we'll use if we could, we'll try to use the same approach, then it will be a better help.
Definitely, most definitely. I will speak to them and I'll make sure that it gets updated ASAP.
And the other thing is, when after seeing a lecture, making notes, we can start doing questions like from revision notes or
That is
something,
on me. Yeah,
right?
that's on me. For SP7, it's been done. For SP8, it's been pending. It's on me. Give me maybe until the end of the week, and I
No,
will
no,
get that done.
that's
No, the
uh,
assignment. You're
that's
asking
okay. I
about the
mean,
assignments, no?
no, no, not assignments. We have the revision notes, which is
Okay.
provided by. So just asking that it's the best way to go ahead, right? After going to the lectures,
Mhm.
we do the revision notes. Not on you. You can take your time. It's okay,
Okay.
because these
Yeah,
slides
I have the
definitely
same
take a
question.
lot of.
Like, what is the
Yeah,
best approach to go through after
Oh,
seeing your
okay, okay.
lectures?
You're looking at, okay, understood. Do you have the CMP along with you? So there are a couple
Yes.
of
yeah.
things.
Material is there.
There
Yes.
are a couple of things that you can do, right? So my material tries to follow the CMP as much as possible, and I deviate from the CMP only where I feel that that entire section is absolutely useless, right? So
Mm.
if I feel that, so I'll give you one example. 1 minute, just let me open this thing, right? I'll give you an example of something that I purposely missed today, right? Because I knew nothing comes out of that, right? Experience rating system is perfect example, right? It's 2 pages. I just took maybe a minute to explain what it is, right? And the reason I did that is
Like Panger's formula.
Panjas
Panger's
formula is a
formula.
perfect example, right?
Yeah.
I know that it's not going to come, right? And I've seen the data, I've seen the trends of the exam questions, right? So
Yeah.
effectively, what I would recommend is once the class is done, right? I will tell you, for example, today I told you, right? Chapters we've covered 11, 12, 13. So go back to 11,
Mm.
12, 13 and look at, just do a quick read through of 11, 12, 13 so that you can understand and you'll get a context of what we have done, right? And solve the
Yes.
questions in the back. Like,
Okay.
solve those questions. Those are very important questions that are there. Solve those questions in the back.
Mm.
And then uh, what we will also do is I am working on, for SP7, I had given, I just finished and I gave it, and I think the SP7 candidates should get it soon. Or have they got it already? I don't know, right? Which is for each paper, I've gone to the past question papers and I've identified which chapter each question comes from and whether that is a higher level question or a knowledge based question or an application question, and what type of question it is, right? State, discuss, what is the command verb. So I'm building that Excel, and once you guys have that Excel, you will be in a position to kind of make